Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Finney recording a review lesson for concept number 1, day number 2 for Math 7 at Red Wing High School. Today's lesson is continuing our work from yesterday on reviewing how to compare rational numbers using absolute values. So we can see here that one of our goals, our learning goal for today, is to be able to interpret absolute values and then to be able to use that to compare numbers on a number line. And so if we look at our solve and discuss, please pause the video and take a minute to work through and think critically about this solve and discuss problem on your own. You can pause the video at any time now so that you can read through it and process it on your own, making notes in your math notebook as you work. Solve and discuss. A portion of a bank account statement is shown below. How would you interpret the value of the ending balance? So you can see here they show us that this person must have gotten a credit card, and now it looks like they have an ending balance of negative $30. Take a minute to think about for yourself, what does that negative $30 mean? And then asking yourself and writing a reflection for yourself in your math journal, what does a balance of $0 mean? Looking at the bottom of this page, we're now looking at a focus on math reasoning, thinking about another connection to this idea of how money is related to positive and negative numbers. What's an example of a bank account balance that represents an amount owed that's greater than $40? So what would that mean if our bank account showed that we owed more than $40? What number might we use to represent that? All right, let's look at another example together. And here I'm going to actually scroll down and look at this try it problem for us to follow along and guide. Oops, I have to turn on my ink pen first. So the students in a science class recorded the change in the water level of a local river. During which week did the water level change by the greatest amount? Use absolute values to represent the change in the water level. The water level changed by the greatest amount in week blank. So by what level did it change by? So we recall from 6th grade that an absolute value refers to the distance away from 0. It doesn't matter that our rational number in week 1 is a fraction, and in week 2 is a decimal, and in week 3 is a negative. Rational numbers just mean they can be written as fractions, which means we have two options. To compare these, we could look at each of these as a decimal. We could turn 7.5 into negative 7.5, or we could turn 2.2 into 2 2/10. So you can work between decimals and fractions. Rational numbers just mean they can be written as a fraction if you choose to. So the absolute value of negative 7.5, the negative tells me that the water level dropped, but it dropped by a positive amount of 7.5 inches. So even though it went down, the change that it went down was 7.5. Week 2, the water level raised by 2.2 inches. So it went up 2.2. And then the 3rd week, we had another drought come in, and it dropped by 4.32. Oops, it appears my face has to get out of the way there. There we go. 4.38. And so now that we've turned our rational numbers all into the same format, they're all in decimals, and we've looked at how the change has occurred, we can see that week 1 had the greatest change in water level. Even though it was negative, it had the largest change. So we look at this convincing question: can a lesser number represent a greater change? And so in this question, they're really asking us, how come negative 7.5 is the answer when we're asking for something that's bigger? And the answer is because we're looking at how much did it change by. The negative tells me whether it went up or down, but it went down a lot more than it raised back up. All right, let's look at another example together of how we can compare rational numbers using absolute value. So here you can see how we can look at an absolute value on a number line. And so we have the absolute value of -4. The absolute value of -4 is 4. Notice right here, whoops, right here is my -4, and the absolute value means that it's 4 away from 0. The negative tells me that I'm going to the left. The absolute value tells me how far away I am. And 0 is our kind of our midpoint on our number line, and then 3 is positive, so I started to the right of 0, but I'm 3 away. And so even though 3 is larger than -4, -4 is further from 0. And here we can look at another example connecting back to our solve and discuss from earlier. Negative numbers sometimes represent debt. Yasmin is a business owner. The table shows 3 account balances that represent her gallery's debts. Which account has the least balance? Which account has the greatest balance? And so account A, she owes $35.42. Account B, she owes $50.99. And account C, she owes $12.75. And so if we look at these numbers on a number line, what we really want to know when we're asking which has the greatest balance, the greatest balance means how close to 0 am I? Which number would I prefer? Well, I would prefer to owe $12.75, not $50.99. And I certainly would not want to owe $35. If I have to owe anyone money, I want to owe the least amount possible. And so even though it's negative, and even though 12 is smaller than 50, -12 is closer to 0 than -50, which means that -1275 is the largest of these 3 accounts. It's really confusing, and it takes a lot of practice to think about how negatives work in reverse, because now the smaller number actually is the more preferred number. I find with lots of students, the easiest way to wrap their head around that is to think about it in terms of money. Would you rather owe me $10 or owe me $50? I would rather owe you 10. So hopefully that helps us understand and connect this idea of how to compare negative numbers on a number line. We have a couple more minutes here before my recording will time out, so let's look at a couple of connecting questions. Again, here we can see the key concept reminds us that the absolute value of a number, the absolute value of a number is its distance from 0. Distance is positive, so how far away it is. And here you can see we have another vocab word being snuck in on us here. -4 and 4 are opposites because they are the same distance from 0. -4 is 4 to the left, and +4 is 4 to the right. So if we look at doing a couple of connection problems here, let's look at numbers 15, 16, and 17, looking at more of those negative debts or those balances that we have. Use the absolute value of each account balance to determine which account has a greater overdrawn amount. So which one has the greater overdrawn amount? How far in debt did we go? So in terms of drawing out and owing money back to my bank, account A has less debt, which means it would be the number closer to 0 on a number line. In number 16, for number 16, I'm actually going to graph a number line here real quick. And I've got my 0, and then I've got -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. It's kind of a sloppy number line, but hopefully it helps us see that -2.5 is going to fall between -2 and -3, and -6.47 is way further down on the left. So if I have to owe anyone money, I would rather owe them the $2.56 and not the $6.47. I'm going to leave example 17 for you to think about as you wrap up this video. So pause the screen, copy down the two account balances for problem number 17. Account A, negative 3256. Account B, negative 2912. If you need to, draw and graph a number line to determine which is closer to zero, account A or account B.